Has the long-awaited altcoin season finally arrived? Now that's the question on the front of pretty much everyone's mind right now, and for good reason. I mean, if you look at the charts, it's not uncommon to see an altcoin move anywhere from 50 to 100% to the upside in less than a week's time. I mean, if you look at things like Chainlink, Teller, FET, I mean, heck, even Near, which is the chart that we have up right now, altcoins are popping off left and right. Now this raises a bigger question of, is this altcoin season finally here? And if that's the case, does that mean this sharp rise in Bitcoin dominance that we've seen, especially over the past year or so, does that mean Bitcoin dominance is finally going to start ticking to the downside? And that raises a third question of, does that mean that Bitcoin and altcoins can collectively go up? Or is one actually in danger of falling in comparison to the other? So there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about in today's video. And all that we ask over here is that if you're interested and if you like the content that we make, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and maybe checking out some of the links in the description down below. But again, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive on in here from the top. Now, there's a lot going on, and we'll come back to the charts in just a second. But if we go over and we look at what's happening in the news, pretty much everything is like, oh, this crypto's up 50%, that crypto's up 100%. Heck, some cryptos are up like 1,000%, and we'll look at some of those charts. But here's just one of those. It says Flocky or Floki. I forget the correct way to pronounce this one, but essentially it's a meme project, and they soared over 140% in a week. And things like Pepe are doing well. And I think one of the differences in what we're seeing between this rally and other rallies that we've seen is that pretty much every sphere, every industry inside of crypto is affected by this. If you go back to the first quarter of 2023, it was pretty much just AI. And then we had a time period where it was just Web3. Then we had another sector where it was just layer 2s that were popping off. But this is a little bit different because everything is getting some love here. And again, we're going to go through a lot of these, but it's not uncommon to see something like, oh, hey, look, Floki's up 140% this week. And if you go and you look at Chainlink, it's like, hey, Chainlink's up 61% this week. And it's up even more if you look at it on the month. It's up like 80, 90%. And so I bring these to everyone's attention because altcoins are doing really well. And for a long period of time, we saw Bitcoin was leading the way. But as all of this is happening, if we go back to Bitcoin dominance is still doing really well. It's come down a little bit, but what this means is that not only is Bitcoin rising here, but altcoins are rising as well, and they're almost rising at the same rate, which is a good thing, because it means that whether you're holding Bitcoin or whether you're holding altcoins, they're both having a really good, I was going to say a really good day, but it's almost like they're all having a really good month, maybe even longer than that. Now, there's other analysts that are coming out over here saying that they are expecting a $100,000 plus Bitcoin. And we've seen these predictions before, but I think the sheer amount of quantity that we're seeing from these kind of predictions is increasing the closer that these Bitcoin ETFs get to being actually approved. I think there's something like a 90% chance that we see a Bitcoin ETF approval before January 10th, or something like that. The numbers are right along those lines. The point is, these Bitcoin ETF approvals, I think it's pretty much like everyone can agree that this is going to be a really positive thing for not only Bitcoin, but the whole crypto market. And not only is it going to be a positive thing, it looks like an extremely likely thing that's going to happen. So it's not a matter of really if anymore. It seems to now be a matter of when. And also the second question is not only when it can be approved, but what will be the price of Bitcoin after we have this full Bitcoin ETF impact done? Now, I word it that way because there are two parts to this ETF. There is the initial reaction and how that affects price, and then there's actually the long-term impact that these ETFs will have on Bitcoin. Now, a lot of people think about the short-term immediate reaction as soon as an ETF gets approved, and I think they're right to do that because that is going to have a pretty significant impact on price. We saw what happened to the price of Bitcoin when a fake ETF got released. We can only imagine what happens when a real one or multiple real ones actually get approved. Now, the second hand factor is kind of what we're referring to here is that, hey, over the long term, over the next maybe year or two, year and a half, what a Bitcoin ETF approval could actually do to price is do more than just this quick spike up to what, whatever it may be, maybe 40, 50, I mean, heck, maybe even to all-time highs, 60, 70,000. But what this is kind of saying is with the long-term impact of a Bitcoin ETF approval, Bitcoin could easily soar to a lot higher than its previous all-time high of around 69,000. It could easily go to 100, 150,000. And I don't think that this is too out of the picture, because when you go and you look at how much of Bitcoin's supply is actually active and circulating, it's a lot lower than people think. And so a lot of people go and they look at Bitcoin's active supply and they factor that in with price and they use that for their pricing models. And they say, hey, there's 19.5 million Bitcoin as part of this active supply. And I want to go over to CoinMarketCap to kind of show this. And so they go and they look at Bitcoin and they say, hey, there's 19.5 million Bitcoin as the circulating supply. It means that it's about 93% diluted. But what a lot of people fail to understand is that this isn't the true circulating supply. If you look at the active supply, the amount of Bitcoin that's actually moved in the last year, this is something I was actually just tweeting about. So I think we can go over and find this one. And I have it actually written up right here. But basically in the last year, we've seen only 31.62% of Bitcoin supply actually move. And in the last 3 years, it's been just around 59%. So if you think that all 19.5 million Bitcoin are floating around out there, you're wrong. We're seeing a very small amount of this Bitcoin actually move around, especially on exchanges. Exchanges are having a hard time getting their hands on this stuff. And there was just another study done, I think it was by Matt Hogan from Bitwise, talking that the amount of Bitcoin that's actually being held on exchanges is at 7-year lows right now. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. Bitcoin is becoming more rare, and it certainly makes these models for a higher priced Bitcoin look pretty likely, especially if the amount of Bitcoin that's out there is maybe half or even a third of what people think that it actually is. So it's something to factor in. Now, another cool thing that we have happening here in the world of altcoins is that we're starting to see some pretty big projects start to launch again. The big one that we just had was Celestia. Now, Celestia inevitably launched at a $345 million market cap, and they did pretty well. But I think the bigger point here is that could we start to see, or the bigger question is, could we start to see altcoin projects pop up again? Because for a while, a lot of projects didn't want to launch in the bear market. I mean, it was a nasty bear market, rightfully so. We can't blame these projects. But a lot of them pushed it off and said, hey, we'll launch once the market gets better. And so now there are all these really solid projects that have been building in this bear market, or as we like to call it, the builder's market, over the last year and a half, 2 years. All these projects have been working, waiting for the right time to launch. And maybe this is that turn of events where we start to see these solid altcoin projects come to the spotlight and actually start launching. And if that is the case, then that's going to present a whole new plethora of opportunities. And this could just be the first in a basket of other altcoins that we can plan to see here. So it's something to certainly keep an eye out on. And then the last thing that I want to do is just kind of go over these charts and talk about the markets as a whole. Because you go and you look at Bitcoin, obviously it's kind of seeing this, what appears to be a squeeze to the upside. You go look at Ethereum, Ethereum's doing really well. It's back above that 200-day moving average, and it's closing candles above it for the first time since, August, a couple of months ago. And even on things like the total too, it's seeing an even more bullish chart where it's not only closing, but it's all break, hook, and go off of this 200-day moving average, which is the representation of the altcoin market. And as I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of individual altcoin projects, whether it's something like Chainlink that's soaring to the upside, or Solana's another great example of one that's just taken off into borderline price discovery mode. But there's a lot of these out there. I think, where is it? FET's another great example of an altcoin chart. If we go and we measure something like this, it's up 74% in the last 2 weeks. And even Teller, this is probably one of the strongest charts. It's up 1,127% in the last 70 days alone. And there's a lot of cryptos popping off. And so with all this, there is room for just about anything to see some upside. And overall, it's an exciting time to be a part of cryptocurrency as sentiment is beginning to change once again. So is altcoin season finally here? Well, I think the answer here is yes. Like, we definitely are seeing a bit of a turnaround in the markets. And if we zoom out to what's happening in the Bitcoin, it's hard to say that Bitcoin's in a bear market when, I'm going to adjust my chart here, but with the chart that I have in front of me, what we see is almost a year of consistently higher price action where Bitcoin is above its 200-day moving average. It's above pretty much all of its major moving averages. And not only is Bitcoin breaking out and using these moving averages as support, and it's breaking out to the upside, but it's also seen a year of consistently higher high and higher low prices. Now, it's hard to argue if you're in a bear market if you have 4 quarters of positive growth. I mean, heck, if you look at the traditional markets, if they have a couple quarters of negative growth or negative GDP, it's considered a recession or depression. So I think it's only fair to say that if we see the opposite of that, where we have 4 quarters of positive growth consistently, then it's a good thing, right? I think it's a sign that a bull market is a bit here. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the markets are doing quite more bullish. But I also don't think that it's necessarily just an alt season, in the same way that I don't think it's just a Bitcoin season. Both are doing really, really well right now, and we're seeing both sides of the market perform. So is it just alt season? No. Is it just Bitcoin season? No. I think we can call this a collective crypto season. And as we are in this final push, right? This final push to the year, this final season, this is historically one of the best performing, not only months, right? As we go from October to November, this is one of the best performing months for crypto. So there's a lot of great things to look out for. And I hope you all did enjoy this video. And again, the only rule that we have here is that if you like the content that we make, then consider hitting that like button, consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you really liked it, consider checking out those links in the description down below, where you can check us out at Crypt Nation and at Altcoin Alert and all of our other sources as well, because we got a lot of great material coming your way. But with that being said, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.